this demonstration or this presentation from Steve. This is Steve and Gibson. So anyway,
that's on today's.
So they need to start their next meeting at 7. So
since we don't have that.
Thank you for taking the opportunity, or giving us the opportunity to show this to you. My name is Steve Ellis. I'm the CEO of Utility. We are a Utah company. We are based down in Sandy, and our company is all about giving the ability for people to see their utility usage in real time. If we can get this experience to go here. There we go. So we're all about showing utilities in real time. Now we do this to different members of society. So we can do this for the end consumer, and I'll show you what that looks like. We also do this for the utility, and the objective is to reduce the expenses that the end consumer would have to incur on utilities with the lack of knowledge. I mean, we're pretty aware of the scenario where knowledge is power for sure. And we know that as time has gotten more into our time, we know that especially as the younger generations are coming into the age of business, they are expecting information to be at the tips of their fingertips. You know, Generation X would like this information. The millennial generation and beyond are expecting this information at the tips of their hands. They know, and we all know in real time when our cell phone or when our credit card has been stolen, we know in real time how much data is left on our cell phone plans. We have all this information available to us at the moment that we need it, but we don't have it for our utilities. And the big question is why? And the big answer back is there's no data available in a real-time solution for homes. So when they're looking to find out how to prevent losses or expenses, they don't have the information at the time of expense to be able to identify what they're doing is what's going to cost them. As he said, for the city, many cities are actually looking at AMI networks. An AMI network is advanced metering infrastructure. They are expensive. They're going to start in the millions of dollars and go up from there. Depending on the size of the city will determine how many millions you go into. It is the next generation or a next generation of utility metering. The downside, though, as illustrated in this picture, is that what we've seen in many locations, including Portland, Oregon, as a very easy example, is that they run into scenarios where these meters are communicating each other's information, trying to get it out of the neighborhood. And because they're unsophisticated pieces of equipment, they don't do very well at that. They end up trafficking each other's information, trying to do that until the point that they fall apart, they shut down. So a widely touted feature of AMI is that they're self-healing networks, and the biggest reason is because they're self-destructing networks, which is why they have to self-heal. We have approached that from a very different perspective. Rather than creating a more expensive meter that you have to put into your infrastructure, we say let's use the meters you already have. Let's use a technology that's able to listen to all of those as often as they chatter. And that's where we created our Smart Drop device, which is able to get that information in real time as that meter is transmitting that information. And we move that into our data system so that we're able to see that in real time and provide that to the consumer in real time. As a consequence, we're also able to provide this to the utility at the very same time. So in a city installation using our technology, rather than having every meter trying to traffic each other's information, we have our smart drops, which are in key locations throughout the city. They have a very good area of coverage. We do like to have overlap on them so that in case there's a problem or a power outage in an area, an overlapping device is able to identify the exact boundaries of that outage. But the difference here is that rather than a network that can fall apart, this is a many-to-one. All the meters are communicating, our devices are listening, and they're backhauling them immediately into our platform. And what that looks like is just like this. The meters are communicating into our device, and then we're providing that over to the end consumer as quickly as we have that. We're talking about milliseconds, not days or hours or anything like that. This is as quickly as we pick it up and can relay it out. I'm going to jump ahead. This is what a commercial installation might look like. We have the ability to enable what I call dumb meters to become smart meters. So if you have some infrastructure that is really old or is of a certain type that doesn't communicate wirelessly, we have the ability to enable that. But the city also has the choice to add in transmitting components into their meters and just use our standard solution as well. An important element that's out there now is distributed power. This is becoming a really difficult area for utility providers with all the availability of alternative energy sources such as solar or wind or hydro or even batteries for that matter. It's difficult to identify when a third party might dump energy onto the grid. It's difficult to balance that against the grid and know if you're going to need to overgenerate or undergenerate based on when that might come in. So our technology is able to see all this information in real time. I guess the short of this is that we're able to forecast all of this information because we're connected directly into the solar inverters themselves as well. So we know how much energy is available from renewable systems as well as what's being done on the normal grid. We do also have solutions for scenarios where you want to get even more granular information. I don't think it's relevant for this particular conversation, though. In our web platform, we have, for the utilities and commercial experiences, the opportunity to see in real time all the different utilities as they're going on, so you can see the real-time usage. This can do a lot on the side of demand shaving, so demand energy. When that penalty starts to come on in the middle of the day, this is able to provide alerting to give guidance to reduce that usage or allow them to at least know that it's about to happen. Every time that we show in real time our system coming live in a building, for them, they've never seen what happens during their day. It's that really big awareness moment all of a sudden of what's happening. We have the ability from a utility perspective to show comparative views, so we can show different either regions of the city, different types of buildings, different types of zones for residential usage. We can show how those compete against each other. We also have real-time blackout maps where we can show within a minute's time if there is a zone that's being affected by a blackout with automatic alerting and escalation for the utility. So that type of information and awareness, it accelerates the response time for the utility rather than having to wait for people to call in and let them know that there's an outage going on. And as we saw today with Rocky Mountain Power, that was a big issue for them with over 18,000 people out of power in Utah County. They didn't know until there were calls. So, and then they had to send people out just to try and find it. We still haven't even heard an accurate answer of what happened today yet. So there are other views in the platform, but I think one thing that's really important for people to see is what the end consumer experience is. We have a mobile app which is available on all the app stores. This is a free application. There's no cost to use this. But the nice thing about this is, if you look on the leftmost image, it's a concept of time against consumption. So that inner black line is how far into the month the person is. The outer circle is how much they've consumed of a goal they set. So they set a limit of how much they would like to limit their expenses on that utility. And in real time, this is monitoring and forecasting the probability of them being able to sustainably hit that. If they don't, if what they're doing right now is no longer sustainable toward that goal for the month, it will give them a push notification. It'll alert them on their phone wherever they are so they can respond to that. Sure, yeah. Gibson will pass around his cell phone. You can actually just experience it live, see a meter that's already been added into it. The second view, which if you touch a button on the bottom, you're able to see the real-time graph of what's going on. And you can see this by hour, day, week, month, year. So you can see very granularly or at a larger level what your usage pattern looks like. What we find is, especially with the notifications, when someone gets a notification that they spent $8 at night while they were asleep, that's a wake-up call for them. They immediately go to the app, they look at what's going on, and they say, what have I done wrong? And they immediately start unplugging things from their house. And that's that visceral, hands-on experience that no amount of commercials on TV, no amount of radio spots, no amount of booklets or pamphlets can educate that conservation experience. People don't, in the United States, we don't really know what we're using because we don't have the visibility as we're doing it to understand that the TV, when it's off, is still on. That when we have our cell phone chargers plugged into the wall but not the cell phone, it's still using energy. These are things that people learn for the first time on their own when they're using our experience. And then the last view is a neighborhood comparison, where you can compare your usage against the neighborhood that you're in. So you can, in a kind of a sort of way, kind of play against the neighborhood and try and get lower and lower as you see where you rank at any given time during the day or the week or year. We do this for multiple utilities, so this isn't just something for electricity or just something for water. And the nice thing about this is, from an electricity perspective, you're going to learn very quickly what's using up your energy and when, and you're going to learn new behaviors to change that because you have that real-time information. And as you can see, we show it in dollars and cents. We show it in kilowatt hours and decatherms and gallons, but at the end of the day, it's dollars and cents that people understand, that's why we highlight it. We try and make this as easy as possible to understand. So from this view here, we're able to see all these different types of usage. Again, from the electricity perspective, we're able to help people to change their behavior. From a water perspective, we're able to prevent really expensive mistakes where maybe you have a sprinkler head that's broken and you don't know it, or you have a pipe broken and you don't know until your basement's flooded. This system is able to identify historical abnormalities and alert the user within 5 minutes that there's an unusual usage going on. So think of it kind of like an insurance program where it's monitoring to try and prevent the loss of utility and damage that it could cause, and also a behavior changing experience. And we do, again, all of that through our real-time monitoring and real-time alerting so that people know exactly when they're doing it. The cost is significantly different. If you're going into an AMI, again, you're looking at spending millions of dollars. In our platform for a citywide development or installation, you're looking at just in the tens of thousands of dollars. It just depends on the city topology as to what the type of density is of our technology. Our technology can also typically be installed throughout an entire city in about 2 weeks, so you can be up and running live with all the information in real time in about 2 weeks. Security is something that's a must for our company. My background is actually a cybersecurity engineer. I've designed the best hacks, attacks, and protections for the Department of Defense, for which I'm under a federal non-disclosure, 3M for their healthcare information, Center 7 data centers, Authorize.net, Zions Bank, Wells Fargo, a lot of financial and highly sensitive information systems. So as me being the CEO and that being my passion, this was the first thing that we actually built into the system was a very aggressive security policy, and we're happy to go into the depths on that if there are any questions on it. We are the winner this year of the Utah Innovation Awards for Clean Technology and Energy. Last year, Vivint won that one for their smart home technology. This is a really great award that we're proud to have. All of our technology is made here in the United States. We actually have manufacturing of our hardware here in Utah as well as other states as the demand grows. We also have what we call a forever warranty, which is as long as our service is used, we'll warrant all of our devices and technology in perpetuity. So there is no additional cost to have something replaced or upgraded. We're used in a lot of different places for a lot of different things. We're used commercially, we're used at a city level and even larger. We're integrated in with inverter companies, as I said before. A lot of companies that you see here, there are many more, but this is just a sampling of some of the types of businesses that we integrate with. The big benefits of our technology are going to be that real-time actionable information so that the homeowners are able to make a change quickly if something's going wrong or if they'd like to spend less on their utilities. You're going to have happier customers because they're going to perceive the utility as a progressive and friendly organization that's trying to give information to the consumer. And then it's going to be extremely low cost as compared to any other type of technology that would require you to replace essentially all of your infrastructure. Thank you again very much for your time. Okay, yeah, so he's adding a few more bullet points to the advantages there. So one of the advantages is the automated meter reading. So you're going to have standardized meter reading times. You're not going to have or wait for irregular billing patterns. You're not having to wait over the weekend for the meter readers to go out and get the information. It's able to occur at the exact same day every month, so you have very standardized and predictable billing patterns. And then we have the ability to integrate with different types of billing platforms, such as Kaysville. And we have the ability in this case to do time of use rates if the city or utility finds that that's meaningful for its residents.
Can you talk about the integration for just a minute on resale?
Sure, absolutely.
How that works?
Yeah, so in the case of integrating with a platform like Kaysville, what we do is our entire platform is driven by what we call APIs. So all of our APIs are first, of course, secured and encrypted, but the integration is simply an API call that Kaysville does into our platform for that type of information. Now they can either pull or we can do an automatic push into their platform. That can be an automated process or it can also be a push button execution. But again, the information is just an API, so all we have to do is at the rate that the utility wants to send the information into it, they can do that. The same thing can be done for a call center platform. So if there's a software that you're using for a call center for supporting the utility, the same API would be available for that call center software to connect to it. So when an agent needs to look up the information, they can just put in the account number and it pulls it automatically from our platform. Other questions?
Could someone define API for me? I'm not versed in the lingo.
Absolutely. An API is an application programming interface. So what that is it is a web accessible communication between two different computers. It standardizes the way that they talk with each other and sets up certain rules of ask versus response.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I got a list of questions here. So first thing, walk us through what the interface looks like for the utility. My understanding is this is a cloud-based system. We're going to log into and we're going to see all of our customers. Is that accurate?
Yes. So the way that it works is we need on our side we need to have the location of a meter. The advantage there is that we have a mapping platform that the utility can use. Now, if the utility is already, or the city is already using a mapping program, we can provide the information of the meters themselves directly into their mapping software, and they can continue using that if they wish. Our objective of our platform is to be as unintrusive as possible. So we can provide all these different experiences and interfaces if a utility wants them, and those are typically either done through a mobile experience or the web experiences, as you saw a little bit of that. But the other is that if you already have software that you're using, you've already spent budget on that, and you don't want to throw it away, then in most cases they have the ability to import information, at which point we make that information importable or exportable from our platform so that you can continue using what you already are familiar and comfortable with.
Okay, so sorry. Everybody's used to this. I'm going to keep asking questions. So my understanding then is we put in your device within a mile radius and there is some overlap. Then that's going to relay back, essentially what you're saying is the GPS coordinates of each meter location tied to a meter number. Is that accurate?
Pretty close. The utility would provide us with the GPS locations of those meters. We have the ability to try and triangulate those, but that type of technology is not great. That's why cell phones don't use that anymore. So what we would ask for from the utility is the GPS locations of the meters. That way we're able to overlay them on our mapping program. With that, we're able to show the real-time blackouts as they occur with that real-time alerting, and we can show exactly what that blackout area is confined to. Without the GPS location, we can still provide the real-time alerting of a blackout, but we wouldn't be able to visualize it. It would need to be visualized in maybe a program that the utility already uses.
Okay, that makes sense. So now you have your the meter location, and now you're pulling the meter data. And you said how frequent are you pulling that data? Did you say?
The meters that this city particularly uses have a data rate of between every 2 minutes to every 15 minutes. They can go much further apart than that, but the electricity is every 2 to 3 minutes.
Can you pull multiple data points like demand reading, kilowatt hour usage, solar usage from the same meter?
Absolutely. Well, so it depends on the meter. If the meter is a solar meter where it has the net meter or the multiple meters inside of it, we can read all of the different meters that are within a single meter. So in the case of solar, we can see those different meters if that's what has been installed in the city. On the other side, though, as far as demand goes, because we're getting that information in real time, we don't typically need to get the information from interval information from the meter. So we're getting that standard consumption every 2 to 3 minutes, which automatically creates the demand information for us. So we're getting it actually as it occurs in real time, rather than waiting to get it 30 or 40 days in the rear.
So the meters have to be reset every 30 days or demand reading? Isn't that how we do it now? Yes, sir.
If you're wanting to use the interval data, in that case, depending on the meters that you have, you may need to do that. I would need to see what type of meter it is specifically, and we'd probably need to look at the instructions or the manuals from the manufacturer on that one. Different meters behave in different ways. Some meters require you to reset that, others do not.
So I have a question about you mentioned virtual AMI versus actual AMI. With a virtual system and an existing meter that may not be it may be limited compared to a true AMI meter. What parameters wouldn't you be able to read using an older meter? I'm just reading a little bit about the AMI meters. They do power factor and voltages and a lot of other parameters just besides kilowatt hours. How would you get those parameters using a virtual system if the original meter can only provide kilowatt hours?
That's a great question. In the case of AMI, not all electric meters can actually provide things like kVAR, power factor, or things like that. In the case of the Itron meters, they actually don't provide that. The big advantage of AMI from an Itron solution, which is a manufacturer, is that they have the ability to remotely shut down and turn back on a meter. What we found, though, in the case like with Rocky Mountain Power and their AMI network, which they are now shutting down, is that when they send a command into the system, it can take up to 48 hours before they hear back to find out if what they actually tried to do succeeded or not. So if you're going to shut down someone's electricity and then they pay, or maybe they move in and they say, I've paid, and you remotely try and turn it on through AMI, and they call in, all you're going to say is, sometime in the next 48 hours, your power should come back on. It's not a reliable platform as far as timeliness of experience for the end consumer. And again, as we showed with the maps, and we've seen with Portland and Seattle for that matter, when an AMI is in place and the saturation occurs, you just start losing data altogether. So it depends on your meter as to whether you're going to be able to get things like kVAR or power factor. On a commercial perspective, power factor is going to matter. On a residential perspective, where you're single phase, it's going to be very unusual to have that need.
Okay.
So ours are Itron meters, at least for the solar. Do we have others as well out there?
Commercial or all? Yeah, but Itron is it's the system we read it from. All residential meters, commercial meters are all hand read.
Okay.
So can your system operate an AMI meter?
We can interface an AMI meter as long as it has not been turned on for the encrypted communication. So if you already have a network with the towers that have already turned on encryption, we cannot read that encrypted communication without having the decryption key either from the city or from Itron itself.
But getting back to the turning the power on or off, would your system be able to handle that more reliably or at all, or?
What we've actually found is that, first the answer is no, we would not be able to turn on or off that meter. Only an AMI meter has that potential, and only an encrypted one can do that because of the threat of people just randomly attacking it. But what we have found in talking with major utilities is that it's a false sale, the ability to remotely turn it on and off. The most important thing that the utility needs is the last read when a person moves out and the new read when a person moves in. Typically, the usage in between is minuscule. We're talking much less than a kilowatt hour, so or 10 cents-ish. So it's very negligible for the utility, and it's much less expensive than sending someone out to actually remove the meter. What we've also found with major utilities is that when you have a case of non-payment, you first have to go through the process of ensuring that you're not, turning off power for, a low-income home or a military widow or something like that. You have to make sure that all the optics are correct. And then when you do that shut-off, what they have found in the major utilities is that in most cases, the non-payment is not because they don't have the money, but because they're just a malicious element of society. They'll actually reattach power back to their own house, even though it's dangerous. So the ability to remotely turn it on and off, especially with that 48-hour window of maybe working, maybe not, it's for the purpose of the utility, the majority of cases is just needing to get that billing information.
But I think to that point, do you have the ability to push back to the meter? Like, let's say not for shutting off, but to reset your count?
The count on the meters automatically start back over at 0 after they hit a certain number. And they're designed that way so they can last for decades.
So I'm talking just the demand. So if we were to want to push back into the meters and, say you're in a commercial application, so we don't have to send somebody by and reset every meter, do you have the ability to push back into the device?
In the current implementation that we're proposing, we do not.
Okay.
We do have the option of communicating with the FCC to gain a site license for special communication on doing that.
That was actually another question of mine is with the FCC regulations, maybe walk through kind of the challenge with that. I know that's something you guys have been working on. So,
So with FCC, the challenge of what specifically?
So the way that I understand that you collect data is that you collect it per the meter and not the customer. And I believe my understanding, just reading into this, is that if you were to collect that per customer name and not per meter name, then you'd be in violation of some FCC regulations. So maybe just talk a little bit on kind of how you get around that.
Sure, absolutely. So in our collection of meter information, we have no knowledge of the homeowner. We don't know their name. We don't actually even know their address. When we're collecting the information, we prefer to do an integration with the utility where we have an API where we connect into the utility. So when someone onboards their mobile app, they put in two pieces of information. One that they can get off of their home, right? They go to their meter, they put in the meter number. The other is the account number, and the account number is something they only get from their bill, so they're the only person that's going to know that. And then what happens is when they put in those two pieces of information, we put in a call or a request to the utilities program or whatever their back-end system is that knows those relationships of account to meter ID, and we simply say, is this a pair, yes or no? And the system answers back yes or no. We still don't know who the person is, but we're able to then provide that experience to that user through a double verified authentication. As far as knowing who the people are, we prefer not to know who they are. We don't like the liability of identity, although we do have the background and the security to be able to handle that. Our security is designed more towards protecting vital infrastructure and ensuring that we don't become a member of a botnet or an attacking network. So in the case of identity from the FCC has ruled very clearly that we have the right to access and read this information. And think of us kind of like, I don't want to say Comcast if you hate Comcast, but kind of a data provider. We're the internet service provider for you, but for utility information. So we're providing that information back, and the consumer has the right to pick who's going to provide that information. As far as the FTC goes, the FTC has actually ruled against another company that we mentioned earlier, that they can't have monopoly of trafficking this particular information back to the consumer. So it is an open land for companies like ours to provide this, although in all honesty, I think we're really the first company to do this.
So if I can, just keep it drilling you, sorry.
Sure.
So talk a little bit on the... I guess to that point, talk a little bit on where it is cloud-based. What do you do with the data? Who owns that data? Is it pushed to other individuals? Those types of things.
Yeah. So the data is stored in the Google Cloud Platform. We have a private instance. We're one of the first 60 companies that Google selected to use its machine learning platform because of the evolution of technology that we've built. It's pretty cutting edge. As far as the information goes, the information as far as the energy industry has been able to legislate or verify, the consumer is the person who owns that information. The utility has a provider easement to the information because they are providing the utility service. And we have the right to be able to provide or communicate that information as a service provider to that. We have the freedom under the specifics of how the radio networks communicate. We have the freedom to be able to provide that information in larger roll-up reporting. So we might provide this reporting to NOAA or to the Energy Information Association, which is a United States government entity. But these roll-ups are in larger abstract views. Think of it kind of like hot mapping different zones of the United States, helping them to understand trends and patterns, probabilities based on residential use versus commercial, helping cities like Park City, who uses our technology, to move forward to net zero and carbon neutral. So we need this information to be able to help different cities to understand the patterns out there as they try and move towards a leaner usage.
So I guess with that, would you have? Sorry, John.
Go ahead.
Would you have? And so I sit on the solar side, so I just want to make sure that if we did not want that to be released to besides the customer themselves. You would not release that to other solar customers, or would you release that to solar customers?
To like another homeowner?
No. So let's say that you have, Hunt Electric or somebody that you want, to throw that out, and they came to you and they wanted to buy this as a subscription. I think that I've seen that. I don't know if that's the case. I can't remember. I don't do a ton of residential, but I'm trying to think that there was Is there a way for us to not allow solar customers or companies to buy this data from you directly?
There is a way for that, of course. In the contract with the city, that can certainly be a line item. However, in the case where a solar company wishes to have the information, they can install our same technology inside of their inverters and glean the same information. By the FCC, the information is considered public domain, and we don't have the right to be able to restrict access to that information. However, the equipment that the city installs can be restricted to only city access.
Okay.
I have a question about the costs. So suppose Kaysville City does put this in place and they spend the much smaller stack of money to do virtual AMI. What would end up being the cost to the city to read meters, to have your service do all this?
You have the specifics.
Yeah, we have a pretty decent ballpark cost, but to install the hardware costs are like between $50,000 and $60,000, and then the ongoing monthly costs. I know you guys have about a little over 9,000 residential meters, some solar net meters, and then some commercial meters. And so the pricing for the residential meters would be $1 per meter per month. Net meters would be probably, we're still moving around this, toying with this, but it's about $3 per meter per month because we're collecting more information on those solar. And then commercial meters, if we can read them, are about $6 per meter per month. So annual costs would be in the vicinity of, and this is just for the power, would be about $170,000 a year.
So on that one, to explain a little bit of that expense, the expenses go into managing the data. Data is actually pretty expensive, especially at the rate at which we collect. Other systems, for example, an AMI system, only collecting at a 15-minute interval, it does also have a pretty expensive price tag to it, actually a lot higher than ours, but they have the same issue that they have to cover the cost of that data management. AMI platforms, after 3 to 7 months, will also throw away all of the data minus one. They'll aggregate the entire amount of data to one data point. So they'll say this kilowatt hour is the amount that user used, and all of the interval information that you could use for reporting and forecasting is literally thrown away. So we store that information forever. We believe that information over time is going to provide better trending analysis and better projects and conservation projects for the city to learn from.
And the other thing to mention, that's an all-in cost that's managing the data. You don't need any servers on site. You don't need any maintenance updates on the server, so everything is managed on the cloud, and that's the one fee you pay.
And that also includes that warranty of our devices.
The pricing you guys threw out there, does that include water meters too?
Water meters would be $1 per month, and that you have about 8,000 water meters, right? That would be $100,000 in addition to.
So you said 100,000, so 170,000 a year for electric, and another 100,000 for water.
How does that compare with how we're our costs currently for reading meters? Do we have those numbers?
Don't have those numbers, but I think the advantage is certainly less capital investment.
Sure.
I think that's what you need to weigh is the ongoing cost versus your capital cost up front.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying the standard also has the yearly fees as well, and it costs more initially, and you have the ongoing fees.
That's true.
Am I understanding that?
That's correct.
It's probably close to 40 to 50,000 a year just for that.
And then you'll also have to continue to pay for upgrades in their technology. Something that we see a lot in utility meter manufacturers is that they will make a new version of their meter, and then they'll require that meter to have a totally new way of communicating. And the objective is that they're a hardware company, so they make money off of hardware. So if they make a new version of a meter, it requires a new type of reader that goes into all the trucks that are going to drive around reading it. It's a constant upcharging over time. So even in an AMI scenario where you think up front that you're going to be spending a certain amount, it continues to go on and on. It was even in the news today, Seattle, in their AMI rollout, it ended up going well over budget. They ended up spending another $12 million for their AMI system, and that's only for 70% coverage of their city.
Whoa.
Wow.
One of the issues we really struggle with is combining electric and water to find a system that works well for both those applications. Whereas this one, we think it's pretty straightforward. There's a reading there, they gather.
Wow.
We support the different types of brands that are installed. We're brand agnostic. Someone like Itron or Census or Neptune, they're not going to support someone else's brand. So each of those companies are not only going to require you to replace the other stuff with theirs, but anything that's not on their latest model, they're going to require an upgrade. It's a pretty expensive model to switch everything into a full-blown AMI environment.
And it doesn't matter what type of meter, because right now, how many types of meters do we have, brand,
Electric?
for the electric?
About 4 or 5, but
For-
it doesn't matter. It's the Itron system that's sending out the information is all all Itron, so it's all standard.
But
The water does at least have 2.
Yeah, the water has a couple different AMR systems, but they said
Would
they
that, with the water, would that affect it?
We're able to read
The-
those as well.
And it doesn't matter?
That's right.
our signal.
But I think the question that I may have to go off of that is, it's my understanding that you actually have to change the meters out in addition if it can't push that data as well. So there would be some meters that we would actually have to update anyway. Is that accurate?
It's a possibility. There are many ways to approach this now. There are many Itron transmitters that are going onto the market now that some locations have switched into AMI. They've taken the really expensive installation process, and they're hoping to get a little bit of recovery by selling their old meters. You can take those transmitters and put them, buy them directly from those utilities and install them into yours so that you don't have to upgrade the entire meter. There are also cases where, yes, you may want to upgrade the meter itself and change it out to a different one. There are a lot of different approaches. You have options. You don't have to do one.
I guess the bottom line is there's a lot of the commercial meters are not transmitting, as I understand it, so that would need something attached to it, Itron or of some sort to do that. Same with 2/3 of the water meters would need that as well. For either system.
That's it. Yeah, for electric side, it's just commercial meters, so we have to deal with all
Okay.
residential or all.
So just from my understanding, there are certain electric meters or transponders that are just continually putting out data versus some just respond to a call. Is that what you're talking about, Brock? There's some meters that you actually need to go ask for data and then it's sent versus just continually pushing out the data.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm saying is what their device does is, in my view, is it pulls basically essentially a map of a Modbus register that says, here's your KW, here's your power factor, here's your, all of these different things. And from his side, their device may, if that meter doesn't have that map in there, then what's going to happen is we need to replace that so that he can see that map and then bring it into their software. So what I was saying is if we have meters that don't have the ability to send that data so that they can read it, then we'll have to replace that meter.
Yeah, we've actually seen on an old hospital, not in this city, but another city, an old hospital that has a power meter from the 1950s. Generally, 1950s old school, right? That's not going to transmit anything. You can't upgrade that to transmit anything. That would have to be replaced with a normal meter.
Right.
So,
In the case where you talked about where it would need drive-by functionality, the drive-by functionality meters can be easily programmed on a drive-by to be able to transmit more frequently. Especially working with the utility, that's something that's easy to change.
now, as far as with the council, the meters that have been approved to be replaced, because didn't we go through this as far as doing a certain amount, or no?
I believe that was the water department.
Yes,
Oh, it was the water. Okay. So that will help, or will that continue, I guess? Do you know, Dean, or?
They can use
We've been using Neptune meters, and the plan has been to continue to replace meters with Neptune meters. So our objective is try to find a system that works with the Neptune system as their preferred meter. We understand
So is it to our benefit to continue replacing those meters still if we do this?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, because,
As you mentioned, about a third are Neptune now,
uh-huh,
and we've got other meters, master meter and others that we need to replace. And our plan is to replace those with Neptune meters. We work with the Neptune system, or we work with their system.
okay.
So another different question. What about if it fails? What happens if your device fails and we're trying, does it pick up the last registered value? How do we deal with, I'm assuming that it's going to hold a value, but if your device fails, what do we do?
So what we recommend when we do an installation is we recommend that we do overlap on the installation. So like this, we recommend that they're able to overlap, and that's actually what our proposal for the city includes, is that overlap. If one device for some reason maybe gets hit by lightning or something, the other devices in the vicinity are able to continue the readings.
Okay, perfect.
Along with that, we'll have real-time mapping of the devices, so we will know when it fails and you will know when it fails. We'll be able to replace that. Everything is a lifetime warranty, so we'll be able to replace that. And then there's also store and forward, so we'll be able to store that information and transmit that information once back. Because what's the capacity of each one of the devices?
Over 60 years.
So if it goes out for a couple months or a couple days, it'll be able to store that and then retransmit that back live.
That's in the case of internet outage or something like that. So we did put in a lot of fail-safes into the design of our technology to make sure that there wouldn't be that loss of information. At the very worst case, if the device were truly down, maybe you had an entire region out, well, nobody would be using any electricity for one, but if for some reason multiples of the devices went out in a region, which would be very unusual, over 10 million of the baseboards that we use have been installed throughout the world, not a single return to the factory. So we went for very reliable equipment. But in the weird case that maybe a handful did go out in an area for who knows what reason, as soon as they're replaced, we know within 1 minute if a device is out, and within 3 minutes we know exactly the details of a blackout zone. So in that period, we know right away, and we're communicating with the city right away saying, is this something that we need to assist you with to replace the device quickly, or is this a scheduled outage? These are different things that we automatically respond to within just a couple of minutes.
What kind of reporting tools do you have for something like that? For example, if we try to gather the readings, how do we know whether we've captured all those readings? We have to wait until it goes into the cell and we find out which meters were read and which ones were not, or do you give us reporting in advance of that?
So in the real-time mapping, in that view, we're monitoring not only our devices, but every meter that's out there. If a meter fails to communicate within an expected margin of error, a certain time period, if it's failed to communicate in that time period, it automatically goes red on our map, and then it automatically has escalation notification to the utility that a meter is no longer communicating. That's only if it exceeds what we say is the marginal expected communication. So again, we rely on that machine learning platform to be able to identify the probability that a meter is actually failed versus something is going on. It's late to communicate.
So I have a question. What do you need, or what does your system need to communicate? I'm assuming it's either done through fiber or the phone or wirelessly, but what does it need to be able to send data?
Our preferred connection is going to be fiber or Ethernet. It's the most reliable. However, I say that with a little bit of bated breath here. The other is that we recommend also that we just use our own network. We use a specialized radio network that has line of sight of over 10 miles, and we're able to do point-to-point backhauling between them. The advantage of that one is that we don't have to worry about the risk of your network being a compromising point for ours, and vice versa. However, if you don't want to use that network system, that's the city's prerogative. You can use Ethernet if you have hard lines at the points where these devices are installed. Those two are definitely our preferred approaches. We don't recommend Wi-Fi. That's not very reliable. We don't recommend cellular because it's expensive, and obviously not satellite, although we have the ability.
So just my limited understanding then, your nodes that you would put out, you would probably put them on utility poles and tap into the existing power there to power them, correct?
That's definitely an option. We actually encourage installing it on city buildings first because of the range of our devices, and then we look at the map and determine before we install where those city buildings are, and then we determine from there if we need to go onto power poles from there. We recommend they actually be light poles. That way we don't have to deal with cabling restrictions and policies with other companies and carriers.
It could be a combination, so if we have some areas that have fiber, for example, substations throughout, we get a reading,
Absolutely.
and in another area we get a reading.
Yeah, exactly.
And how big is your device? How big are the nodes?
It's about that big, about the
So
size of two
it's
deck of cards side by side.
It's really tiny.
It is.
Okay.
Is that a 120 input? Is that what you're saying?
It's a DC 5 volt. We step it down from whatever's provided.
Okay.
What's the continual power draw of that little device?
At maximum performance of a theoretical 600,000 meters being monitored by one device, it would use 6 cents under your current power plan in a month.
In a month. Okay.
Is there a way to decrease the data rate to decrease the cost?
We can gather data at a less frequent amount. We can look into seeing how that might shake out. We just have to do the numbers on it.
Okay.
We have to, again, evaluate what the impact is going to be to the consumer. Less frequent information becomes less actionable.
Yeah, 6 cents a month, that's just in the
Would
noise
that
of
decrease
the light pole.
Yeah.
The ability
Of
for
its
the power
power
department to
consumption.
see the outages and things like that quicker?
Yes, yes. So slowing down the frequency would slow down your blackout alerting.
Yeah, if you don't get something every hour and it's a report per hour, you don't know if it's your report for the next hour, so it just increases that.
So there's the possibility of getting reports back to the power department for outages every 3 to 15 minutes. Is that what you said?
It's actually a little more sophisticated than that. Rather than just waiting for an individual meter to go out, the machine learning is looking at the area or the zone, and it's looking at the pattern of or the velocity of information in total coming into it. And if that velocity drops below a certain margin, it's an automatic assumption of failure. So if you drop down to 80% inbound information over a minute, it automatically says there's a problem with this zone.
How does that information get related to the power plant?
The first way is you'd be able to see it directly on the mapping view.
They have a tool that would actually physically look at it.
Yes, and we actually we like for people to have a television dedicated to showing that real-time map, so that someone can always have tabs. But the other is that if the mobile app is installed onto the utility workers' phones, they would automatically, as an identified utility worker, receive the automatic notifications of an issue.
And I guess the minor point is if it is a plant maintenance of some sort, you can go down, you don't want to automatically go out as it's unplanned outage. Planned outages, and unplanned outages look the same on a map if there's no, if the platform doesn't have that knowledge, but the workers and the folks that can send out the notification would have that knowledge if it is in fact a planned outage.
I have a question for you. So you mentioned that this is public information that's accessible to anyone who wants to access it. Have the transponder manufacturers like Itron or others tried to make the case that this is their proprietary product and they're sending the signal, and I assume they have their own readers that we're using for our meter readers. They're trying to sell both as a package deal, right? So are they worried about that risk, and are you seeing pushback from that side of the industry?
Well, we see certainly pushback from meter manufacturers as we, I guess you could call it, invade their space. However, as far as patentability goes, they don't have the ability to patent the transmission of the information because that's not a novel technology. Radio transmission of information has been around for over a century now, so they don't have the ability to patent anything uniquely on that. They don't have the ability to patent the reading of that information either because, again, the ability to read a radio transmission has been around for over a century, so they don't really have anything for that. Do they want others to do it? Actually, I believe it was in 2007, Itron held a convention where they stated that their information was to be treated as open information and that they were not going to be the sole proprietors of that information. And for that matter, the FTC ruled against them specifically for trying a couple years prior to that, which is I'm sure why they decided to change their voice. But they were seen as monopolistic in the transport of the information.
Okay. So do you guys own a patent or...
We do
have
own,
a patent
we don't
on
own,
this?
On this, there is no patent on this particular technology. We do have IP on it.
Okay.
Reproduction of it would be pretty difficult, but again, it's an open market opportunity. We're the first ones to do this, and especially cross-brand. I imagine as our success becomes nationally well known, we'll see duplicates.
Back to the power outages, scheduled power outages, is there any way of notifying customers through your system that there's going to be a scheduled power outage?
There is. That's one thing that we hadn't brought up. Thank you for that. We actually, in our platform, because we have the notification system for the mobile devices, we have the ability for you to also, as a utility, in the utility side on the web platform, to issue out public notifications through the mobile app. And the content of that information is your prerogative. We certainly recommend caution on frequency and content, but it is your right to communicate with your citizens as you see fit.
So just on that, I guess, talk a little more on the app and how it can be customized for us. Would that be, we could use the Kaysville logo, we can, full open source, or kind of walk us through that?
We have the ability to brand the app to make it look like a Kaysville product. We don't normally do that, but we have the ability. So normally what we do is we geofence, which identifies the location of the meters. As they claim those meters, then it's automatically identified within the geofence, and we could brand that. Branding is typically an additional expense on our platform because we do like the idea of people knowing that we're out there. But if the city wants it to be exclusively identified as a city product, that is something that can be discussed.
Well, it could be a shared product where you get some credit for it and Kaysville gets some credit for it.
Absolutely.
If we're paying this kind of money, we ought to get our name in there somewhere.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we can do that.
So I'm going to keep going, sorry. Walk us through, so number one risk that I see, and it happens a lot, is you see a company start growing, and the number one question I always ask is bankability. How do we protect our investment? Itron, obviously, some of these big names, I can't remember all the names that are on here, but how do we protect that moving forward? What happens in, let's just say, year, 2 years, 3 years, something happens at the company level, that support's dropped. What do we do?
As far as if our company stops responding or providing the level of service?
Or bankrupt or any of those things. What do you do for warranty? You have a 25-year warranty on these things, or lifetime warranty. What happens, for us, right, for an electrical contractor, a warranty past, 2 to 5 years is pretty extreme. Seeing it in solar, we see solar warranties that are 25-year warranties. Then next year we see the solar company go out of business, and then we're wrapping that warranty. So what would happen? Walk us through the extreme case.
So in a worst-case scenario, first I think it's important to bring up that we are venture-backed by most of the VCs and angel investors of Utah, as well as New York and beyond. We have a very good list of support. The other is that our contracts keep us in the is it the black? Positive? It keeps us on the good side.
Black.
Yeah, keeps us in the black. So as a company, we're having tremendous success, and we believe that innovation is vital. Continual innovation is vital to maintaining that success for our company. Worst case scenario, which I would hate to think would occur, is that we would at that point then have to transfer the web platform. We would basically dissect it. Or partition it out so that each utility grade that is using us would receive their own, if you understand the term, shard of our platform, where they would be able to continue to operate it themselves.
So that would just be my recommendation. If we did move forward, we'd put that in that contract, just so that that's taken care of.
I guess worst case is where we are today.
Correct, but you could be
Or would
out
it be worse?
under the thousands.
Still have hand readers, you can still.
Hardware, so it's not necessarily needing to sell the next hardware to be profitable. We're profitable from monthly fees. So low hardware costs also affects the business model going forward, so that we'll be around for foreseeable future.
Right, and all I can say is I've seen companies start, and then if they don't have that patent for the software, then more money comes in on top, and then you see that other company not advance their features, and then next thing you know, we're stuck with an old product or something along those lines.
Now we have other technology that is patented, and then that other technology isn't really discussed at a utility type event, but that one is being very aggressively purchased by actually solar. We're talking I guess the numbers don't really matter, but it's significant.
Yeah, I actually I set you up with the patent thing. I read your other patent, so. I think that's all my questions. So,
I guess this is kind of maybe for you guys, kind of for our utility people as well. But our current transponders have a battery life of however many years. I don't know what the average year is, but then we have to correct me if I'm wrong. But we have to go through and replace those transponders when the battery starts to fail and we can't get the reads right.
In the power meters, there is no battery.
Oh, duh. Never mind.
I guess
I come from
Neptune
gas.
ones.
I come from
But in the water
gas.
meters, that's a good question for the water meters because the water meters.
And water
are
meters, for
20
example.
years. They're
We've
rated
had
20
a
years.
headache
10-year
with.
10-year guarantee.
Okay, 10 years. So we've had a headache at the gas utility with a few batches having bad batteries in them, and we've gone and done manual reads on these batches, and it's just becoming a headache for us. So we're out replacing these batteries, but I'm just curious because when you go to replace those transponders in the future, I'm curious how the contract usually is with these Itrons or these companies. When they're selling us the transponders, how much of that is a package deal with the reader? And if we're not using their reader, how does that impact our negotiation there? I'm just curious.
As far as electric meters, we can order our meters with any ERT we want in them. So it doesn't, that doesn't.
Yeah, but you're
doesn't
right.
matter
I
to us.
mean, when we're talking about Neptune meters or the master
Yeah,
meter,
water.
and there's a battery in there that's actually powering the radio.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of impact this would have on that.
Yeah, so in the case, let's talk about the real world of AMI first. In the real world AMI with water, when they have a transmission of every 15 minutes, which is standard for them, they claim a 10 to 12 year life. We see more on the level of 8 years, and before those have to be swapped out. Those typically fall under warranty, but I can't guarantee what your contract states on that. So you definitely need to talk with the provider of those. But 8 years is pretty much the point at which on an AMI that battery has to be swapped out. In our case, we're gathering information on water at essentially the same rate. You could do it slower on water if you really wanted to, but typically it's not the transmission that's consuming all of that battery. It's usually the weather that's contributing most to that, especially if it's above the frost line. That constant extreme heat and extreme cold, that doesn't work well for batteries. So they're using industrial batteries, which is good. It's a good start.
Function rate different from water and from power?
Certainly, yeah. You can set them at any intervals on any different type of solution that you want. Even different types of customers you can have transmitting at different rates. Again, the major contributor is going to be weather, though.
So if Kaysville buys into this for the water and the power, it also makes it available for gas for one of our citizens to utilize it to track their gas consumption as well.
The platform will already have the ability to receive the gas information. So the devices out there are already gathering gas information. Now, as Dominion is now rolling out the new Itron meters that they're using, they're replacing their old Elster meters with those. They find a lot of trouble with the Elster devices. So as they're swapping them out with the new Itron meters, we found that they're making those transmit about every minute and a half, so very frequently. They'll probably want to dial that back, but the meters, as they're being swapped out, as far as the transmitters go, are already supported by our platform. We support the Elsters as well. The downside is that the way they're currently configured is once a month as they drive by. So we have a very nice relationship with Dominion. I can't go to what extent that relationship is, but we do have the ability to read both types of meters at different rates.
Well, my question is
So the end consumer would subscribe to that themselves because the city is not the provider of that particular utility. If Dominion in the future chooses to engage in the same type of agreement, in that case, it would be the same experience for natural gas users.
So what would the rate be for a customer to buy that themselves?
By themselves in the app, they would be able to do that for $2 per meter per month.
Okay.
So in theory, you could do this for secondary water too.
That's right.
And it really comes down to what Dominion uses. As you guys have multiple meters, they have multiple meters and multiple protocols. So it really comes down to what type of meter you install this application.
How does your system tie into a city's billing software? Would we use your billing package, or would we take the information from your API and put it into our billing software?
I would say at the moment our billing platform is not sophisticated enough for multiple utilities all at once into the system. We are working on that, and that will be something available next year. In the meantime, I would recommend that we just do the integration connection between us and your current billing platform. If you're comfortable with the platform and you like it, I would say just keep using it and minimize frustrations.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Those were all very excellent questions. That kept me on my toes. I appreciate it.
They tell us that we need to do a bunch of research on you, and I've had the fortune to work with you guys in the past. I know a lot of our customers, a lot of the people that you listed up there are using your meters, and I think that they've had some success there, and definitely we'll be reaching out to kind of hear their experiences as they move forward, and as you bring on more and more. But I guess on that note, if we did want to view a site, we're pretty hands-on group. Is that a possibility to see an installation that's around here? I believe you had some in Ogden, right? Just really close at one time.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
University of Utah would be a good site. We're also the biggest utility moving forward. Gargoza Water is my water utility. It's a pretty small water utility, but that's our first utility scale demonstration. We've got at least one antenna for testing moving forward with them. We're also in conversation with Logan and the at the same time. So everyone moves a little bit differently in speed-wise, but University of Utah is a good location, and then trying to think of good.
Gargoza is actually a really good scenario for them to look at because it's able to show you in very difficult terrain how much we're able to receive and how far away. The Gargoza installation, that test, that was a unique one. Park City, I don't know if you know, but we did win the project with Park City, so we are doing a citywide installation for them. We're just going through the process of hammering out what they want to see because they are not the providers of the utilities that they want to look at. Their efforts are mainly geared towards the net zero and carbon neutral projects. So what they're looking for is that real-time information back on it's the real-time information back that they want to see on whether one of their conservation programs is working as they move towards that project. It's in my on the front of it.
You guys also said you'd be willing to set up a test area and show us how it
Absolutely.
here, right?
Yeah, we're happy to set up a test area. There would be no cost up front for that test area, and you can see in real time exactly what it looks like and the type or the amount of information it's receiving. Kick the tires, see if it does what we claim. Again, though, we're happy to show, like in Gargoza, that one's picking up, its furthest meter away is over a mile away, and it's actually picking it up just on the other side of the crest of a hill, which surprised us. Radio waves don't normally do that. But we're able to, with that one antenna, we're able to pick up over 60% of the city. So we have really good results.
Do you need a surface to HDMI?
Yeah, I think so.
Brock's got one.
I got one.
Let's just pull one out.
We have them in the GIS already. We can produce GPS locations from those, We can go.
Now that being said, too, we do have multiple installations at smaller scales throughout many different cities as we did our initial tests. So we can also show all of that information as well as the demonstration in the city itself.
So we have a link between between, we have a link between the billing data and that meter information. And so we can
Jordan,
merge
while,
those two
while we're
together
waiting,
and
what is the cost of a meter replacement? Do you remember?
and then distribute out the meter replacement.
Just one meter?
It's
Maybe
not-
maybe that's a Bruce question, but
It's a really simple reason. Yeah, no,
Okay.
no, no.
Make sure.
Bruce, real quick, what is the cost of 1 meter? Just approximately 1 meter. I think we have about 800 commercial facilities. So I'm just trying to get an idea of,
On a commercial meter,
yeah, what's the cost of one?
well, and a lot of those are single phase, some are three-phase demand, some, they're all different prices. Gary knows the prices on it better than I do on the commercial.
The commercial meter ranges from 325 up to 400.
Okay. Okay.
Three-phase commercial.
Okay. That's perfect.
You don't have internet access. Yeah, thanks, my phone.
I have pulled up on Google Earth, so that's the. I think you have an open one here. KGuest is an open network.
Yeah, you'll have to go to a webpage though, to accept or okay. It'll take a second.
So I have a question for you guys. Are you guys appointed by the mayor or city council, or how does the power council get formed?
We
Yeah.
were appointed by the city council.
By the city council?
Mhm.
And you're a
Yeah.
member of the city council?
Yeah, I
You
am.
get a special name tag?
I represent the city council for the Power Commission. So, but yeah, what they'll do is the Power Commission will make a recommendation to the council, and then the council will make the decision.
Jordan, see, we'd be able to get time of use data.
Yeah.
Be able to do time of use rates right off the bat with this
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. What were you saying? $2.5, $3 million was our estimate for the AMI versus
70.
170.
Well, the one was 1.4 million.
Well, that's for just the electric.
1.4.
Yeah, so it'd be
Without the-
270 for both electric and water.
The Eaton package was almost 4 million, which was a joke.
Well, and anyway,
Bob should
we'll
be
talk about that later, but yeah, you'll
killed
have,
for that one.
they're still not apples to apples. A lot of them don't have the meter cost in there. It says refer to this, but it wasn't added in the cost. So anyway, they're all a little different the way they put the packages together, so. And we'd have to look closer, but their monthly, management fees of the data are not cheap either.
No.
Yeah.
So here's it doesn't show up great, but you can get a decent sense. This is a 1 mile radius. I got some locations from Ryan, so you can see you get pretty good coverage with city locations. Some of these are parks, so we probably would have just a location, maybe 10 on some of those parks, but one is a cemetery and one's a water tank. So at least it gives you an idea of what a potential coverage. The resolution isn't great up on the screen. You can kind of get a sense. This is just based on existing city buildings. Do you guys only have one fire station?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I was like, there's got to be more.
No?
So that gives you a sense of a Kaysville deployment. And then this is, Gargoz is up here, just to give you a sense, this is I-80. And this is all the water meters we're reading. To give you a little bit of a sense, there's about 1,500 feet vertical between this point down here and the top of Gargoz. So this is Eckerd Hill, where they had a ski jump back in the day. We're looking at deploying antennas on top of each one of their water tanks, but the antenna is located right here. This is probably a 500-foot hill, and so you can see the coverage from all the different meters we're getting. There's a blank spot here because these are all using, they're not AMR meters that they're changing out, but it gives you a sense. This is 700 meters from a location that it's somewhat densely packed, but in other ways the topography makes it very challenging with the ridges and the elevation gain. But it gives you a sense with a clear shot. We're reading up, and this circle is a mile distribution. So we're seeing these meters up on this hill that are over a mile away. And some of these, this is tucked behind a hill, so we're not going to be able to see those. We'll have to put some more. The plan for this deployment is 4 to 5 devices spread out on their water infrastructure. But it gives you a sense of what we can pick up with one device.
So just a question. Go back to the other one that was showing all the overlapping at the city that.
This is for Kaysville.
Okay, so if one of those meters or devices goes out and it's on the edge and it overlaps, but won't there still be some homes that aren't covered? Am I thinking right here? Because this.
Well, this is just using the locations that are owned by the city.
Right.
So we would like, for utility scale, we like to get double coverage so that there is in case of one.
So there would end up being,
Yep.
okay.
And do you want to talk about clownfish?
Yeah, sure. So we have a protocol that we call clownfish. A little education for the night. If you don't know clownfish, they're all male except for one. That's a female. When the female dies, the next largest male becomes female. So a little education tonight. We use what we call clownfish protocol, which is that whichever collector in the area is receiving the best communication from those meters, it automatically is elected as the one that's going to receive that information. The others still listen and gather the information, but they don't transmit it back into the data center. Just the one that knows that it's got the best strength is the one that does that. When it no longer is communicating that information, the others around them automatically invoke the clownfish protocol, so that they then they've been collecting the information but not sending it. At that point, they are escalated to the point that they start sending it. So it's a fail-safe. Again, our hardware is designed to not fail, but we don't trust hardware either. So we make sure that they're able to cover each other. Again, in this map, these are just if they were mounted only on city buildings, but the proposal would include installations in other locations that provide that real overlapping to enable the clownfish.
So are these circles, they're 1 mile diameters? So 1 mile radius, okay. So that's kind of just assuming that's what it's going to do, but it may perform far better than that in certain areas. So they might overlap far more in some regions and less in others.
The hill, and this is to cover all Kaysville. There are also overlaps outside of Kaysville towards some of the edges. Like this part, the circle down here is right on the edge of Kaysville, as I understand it. So
even in those cases, you wouldn't be able to actually see those meters, although your device is collecting them, unless you had identified them in your platform to say these numbers belong to us.
Okay.
So we can just charge Farmington, right?
the other thing we heard from Ryan was that some of the master meters have very weak transmission, so we want to make sure we get good overlap and are able to collect those. The nice thing is what I just showed you from our goes, so those are all Neptune meters that are in the ground. We're expecting to get better transmission reception from electric meters that are above the ground. And once again, we can do a test, no cost to you, and then we can do layout of the proposal that will give us a great radius. One of the challenges we've had so far is we don't know exactly where each meter is located, so we don't know how far each has been able to collect. That's why our goes as a good test. I'll be able to show you that, and show you exactly where collecting this meter, and that is this far away. Putting up a trial site will cost you guys just to demonstrate that our technology works and how it could put these to deploy in your system.
The other thing about that that should be mentioned too is that in an AMI environment, a more expensive environment, they never aim for 100% coverage. They aim for above 90% coverage, many times above 95%. But we see, for example, in Seattle, they have less than 70% coverage, and they've already blown way beyond their budget. That's an unfortunate reality of those types of systems. Whereas on our system, much less expensive solution, we aim for 100% coverage.
I get the feeling we're going to have another field trip here.
I think so. Yeah, I think it would be definitely, if it's possible to visit one of these, I think it'd be really good on our side to see, see the interface, see how they've adapted the billing, those types of things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, would you, for billing those things, we can set up a demonstration for you to come back. We can go anywhere to show you the integration with the platform. Would it be beneficial to do a test site and then, show you the data and how it integrates versus a test site? It's not very exciting. It's an antenna with a device on it that is basically hooked into the internet. It's not the most exciting devices, but let us know what works best for you guys.
Okay.
So you could set up a test site here and show us how it would feed information into the city's billing
Absolutely.
system. That'd be a good next step, I think. Staff?
I agree, it should be the next step. I think first of all, we need to get through our the 11th meetings where we evaluate the 3 AMIs we picked, Eaton, Lannis and Gear, and who's the other one? The 3? Honeywell. So, and then after that, I think we can make a decision on whether or not we want to continue.
Would any of those 3 be willing to, put them side by side and do that same piece? Because I think if you've shortlisted the 3, it might be worth asking them to put in something to view it side by side.
They don't have the capability, though. We'd have to change meters to get their information. The whole different meter.
Okay.
That's where most of the cost comes in, is the replacing all the meters.
Okay. I think truthfully, this is the next section, and it's all public anyway. I think the transition, in my opinion, what you're trading, and this is what I'd look to Jordan to say, is what your trading is, and I need to understand a few more, and I'd like to see them. But I think the question that you have is what kind of money, what kind of rates do we have as the city? I think where we're concerned about upfront capital, I think we have to look at the rates that we were able to finance, and then look at that and look at the long-term benefits. I think we're going to need to see it, put a model to it, make sure we agree. And I'm pointing to you, Jordan. I'll help you in whatever I can in engineering terms. But I think put them side by side financially would be very beneficial as well, as far as features.
Yeah. Is there anything you need from us to help with that analysis?
Jordan, any thoughts on that? Sorry.
I look more to the staff, I think, as far as the operational. It sounds like some of the trade-offs are the shut-offs and turn-ons, and how valuable is that? But I think you're right. We make a list of the pros and cons and line up the dollars and see what makes sense after we see the proposals from the others as well. I just want to thank you guys. I know we're bumping up into this next meeting, but personally, I do rate making for a living for another utility. And today I have this book from the 60s that's been passed down through the department, and it's this guy Bombright, who's kind of like the theory, the guru of rate making that everyone refers to. And we do the same rate making tactics that were going on 50 years ago. And he writes in there, you could do better things if you had the technology to do it. And for me, I get excited when I hear about this, because there's a lot of things as a rate making spreadsheets guy that we don't do just because the technology hasn't been there. So I appreciate what you guys are doing, and thanks for coming and presenting that to us.
Thank you. On that note, one last thing is, if anyone here was able to attend the Utah Clean Air and Energy event, it was earlier this year. They do it every year. The big complaint that everybody had on the open mic opportunity with the legislation sitting up on the stage was everyone was saying, why can't we set new types of building structures for solar? Why can't we set new structures for different types of energy or batteries or things like that? And the constant response back from legislation was, we don't have the data. And so that was just constantly killing question after question, is they didn't have the data. They want to, they just didn't have it. But thank you all. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So I guess we'll just leave it up to you to set a date and time and.
Yeah, so I think if I can get your guys' contact info, I think I have it, but.
I know we're already into the next meeting, but 2 minutes or?
Yeah, I think
do we
is
get
it
any
okay to do
break?
a bathroom break?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Before we get started.
Nice to see you again. How are things? We'll walk over here.
Nope, we're not okay.